Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Toffee Blues podcast. I'm joined by Mike Richards from the Unholy Trinity podcast, and we're here in what's the sort of first sort of debrief in the close season, if you like. There's been a collective sigh of relief for a lot of Evertonians in the last couple of weeks since we secured our survival on the last day against Bournemouth, which all delighted with, of course. You know, a lot of talk going into that game, but it's firmly in the past now. But to say that things are quiet on the Everton front wouldn't be very true, to say the least. It seems to have just keep rolling on, even though the season has finished. So before we jump in, Mike, how's things with you, mate? You all good?
Well, right now the season's over, yeah, a lot more relaxed. Been a nice couple of nice, calm, relaxing weekends since obviously that Bournemouth game at Goodison Park. So all good, but like you say, mate, obviously Everton's never quiet, is it? And things have ramped up once again over the last few days.
Yeah, that's it, isn't it? Yeah, things have certainly ramped up, to say the least, off the pitch. And we'll jump into all that, I'm sure. But before we do, just want to spend a moment just reflecting on that Bournemouth game and sort of, the end of the season as a whole, which of course saw Leeds and Leicester get relegated and Everton just surviving on 36 points, which was incredible to see. How we did it without a striker for 90% of the season, having got weaker in January, not bringing in a players. When you put it all into perspective like that, would you say it's incredible how Everton managed to survive given the predicament we were in last season and just everything that went with it? Just how would you just sum up your feelings just at the end of that season, given everything that happened?
I think obviously it was sheer relief, wasn't it? Once again, had a much different feel than it did in the previous season. This, one of my favourite sayings has been basically one season it can be an anomaly. Do it twice in the spin, it becomes a habit, and it's becoming a habit, and that's the issue that we've got. So it was relief, of course, delighted. We know what dropping into the Championship would have meant for this football club. So it's absolutely huge and vital that we stayed up. Obviously, that's bringing its own problems with it, which I'm sure we will discuss. But I think that that relief quite quickly gave way to anger in the ground, especially. We were all there, and it was quite clear what the thoughts of probably 98, 99% of the fans was about 10 seconds after the final whistle. And those who ran on the pitch were quite quickly, they were made aware what a lot of people thought about that. It wasn't a time for immense celebration. It was relief turned into anger, and you've got to give the manager credit. A lot of people said at the time when Sean Dyche came in, if he keeps us up, he's a miracle worker, because we all thought at that point after that West Ham game, that it was a foregone conclusion that we would drop into the Championship. So I think that we need to give the manager credit where credit's due. And like you say, the fact that we spent so long without Dominic Calvert-Lewin, the fact that we had no one coming to back him up really in the summer or in January, and the fact that we had so many issues surrounding injuries to key players at key times and suspensions to key players, the Corey being the main one. I think Sean Dyche did particularly well, and I think it's vitally important that he's backed as best he can be in the summer transfer window.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember last time we did one of these, Mike, and we talked about that Newcastle game and coming out the ground. We were almost resigned to our fate, weren't we? And then I think post that Newcastle game, when we had the Leicester Brighton double header, and then of course you had the final couple of games against City, Wolves, and Bournemouth. That was sort of the run-in for me, those 6 fixtures. Then that was when it was really do or die for Everton. And, there were moments like the 5-1 at Brighton, which no one saw coming. Of course, the points away at Leicester. And of course, let's have it right. We were fortunate with a lot of other results that weren't exactly in our hands. You think that Leicester didn't pick up a win at St. James's Park, which if they did, we'd be having a very different conversation right now. Little moments like the Pickford penalty save, if that goes to 3-1, you find it very difficult to see how we would have got a result out of that. So for you, I suppose it's very hard to really nail it down to one particular moment, because there was a lot of, contributing factors. But for you, what was the point where things started to click into place that we can do this, we can stay up here now? For you personally, was there a specific moment or game for you where you thought that we can get out of this?
At the time, you mentioned it then, it was the Pickford penalty. And looking back, that's played a pivotal part in us staying up. If we go 3-1 down obviously just before half time in a game that we bossed. To be fair, that first half, we bossed the first half. We had the best chances. That was the moment, wasn't it, where we went in 2-1 down. You saw Pickford's celebrations, and at the time he was much maligned for doing that. But he probably knew himself, listen, this is a big moment. So at that particular point, that led to us getting a point. It meant that Leicester win, there wasn't going to be a big shift in terms of them pulling away from us, and it kept us, truly in the race. But, the moment, the game has got to be Brighton. If you look back at that game, prior to the game, no one gave us a hope, even ourselves. We thought, get a point here. It'd be absolutely fantastic to get just a point against a side that were fighting for European football, which they got. Finished sixth in the table, play a lovely brand of football, turns over at Goodison Park, obviously, before Frank Lampard left the club. I've got players both who start and also off the bench who can cause us major problems. And he just couldn't see how this Everton side could go there and get 3 points. And, the whole 90 minutes was absolutely sensational. So that was really, when the full-time whistle went, because I didn't relax until we scored the fifth, to be fair.
Yeah.
And, that's just what Everton does to you. But when that final whistle went, that's when you thought, listen, we're in with the shout. Now, to go there and do that, not only is it a big 3 points in terms of obviously pulling us away and give us a little boost in the Premier League table, it was what it did psychologically to both players, manager, fans alike. The fact that, hang on, look, we've just gone to Brighton and just scored 5 goals. Ridiculous. And there's always those kind of games at the end of the season. And normally Everton are on the end of a hiding, aren't they? But
yeah,
it was ourselves who gave one. So that was the moment. And then obviously Yerry Mina's last minute stoppage time equaliser, forgotten about.
Yeah.
It just kept things just ticking over, because you just think, don't get a point there. What does that do to the players psychologically? It's such a balancing act, isn't it? So it's so fine, that particular balance from sort of positivity and negativity. But for me, it's got to be the Brighton game was the game. But individual moments has got to be Jordan Pickford.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think, I alluded to it before, but James Maddison scores that, it's 3-1. You find it very difficult to see how Leicester don't go on to lose that game. And for us, that just would have been a disaster, knowing the result we got a few days earlier against Newcastle. So, in the end, we were very fortunate to get over the line, of course. I mentioned other results as well helped us out massively. Leeds had a huge fall off. The appointment of Sam Allardyce perhaps didn't go the way that a lot of people expected it to, and Leicester just didn't have enough to get over the line in the end. So very fortunate, and we all know that we can't afford to be back in this position again, and we want to leave. It's almost like the last 2 seasons are almost like, if you think of a better phrase, they're like 2 cheeks of the same arse in a way. They're like, it's just been like the same sort of story, and we just want to move on from this now and just forget the last 2 years and hopefully try to really heal this club and really start to move forward. And it's not a quick fix. We know it's not a quick fix, and it's going to take, probably, if we're being honest, a number of years to get back to where we all, expect Everton to be. Now, I want to just talk about the manager. Sean Dyche, of course, was brought in to replace Lampard. The job was very clear, to keep us up. By hook or by crook, he ended up doing that. So how do you personally rate Sean Dyche's time as Everton manager? Came in on pretty much the last day of the transfer window in January. We didn't bring anyone in, no fault of Sean Dyche's, of course. Made some big decisions, such as bringing Abdoulaye Doucouré back into the side, putting faith in players, rightly or wrongly, such as Michael Keane, bringing Yerry Mina back into the fold. Had a bit of a sticky spell around Easter sort of time when we went through that torrid run when Doucouré wasn't in the side. You think back to the United result, the Fulham game. So how would you rate Dyche's time? Of course, he got the job done. We survived. So how does he kick on from here now?
Well, I think his record was 5 wins, 6 draws in terms of picking up points, wasn't it? And as you say, the simple task was keep Everton in the Premier League, and he did it. We would have all preferred it not to go to the final game of the season. I think we all, like I said at the start, people were saying if he keeps us up, he's a miracle worker. He did that. We all would have preferred it to have gone earlier, but we all probably knew it wouldn't have gone earlier. I said for a long, long time, if we're going to stay up, it goes to the final game of the season. It was as simple as that in my mind. There was games where I thought we should have won, and he should have done better. It's easy to people. We were pulled ourselves on our show for criticising Sean Dyche and not giving Lampard potentially the same level of criticism. And what I would always say is Frank Lampard was kept on too long. We all agree with that. A lot of people weren't coming for Lampard's head after the Bournemouth games. From what I remember, it went on into sort of that Boxing Day, the Wolves game, obviously Southampton. That was the time for me, especially.
Oh, absolutely.
But I think you want to give a manager time to try and build a side, and we all had that good sort of connection with Lampard from the season prior. Unfortunately for him, and since obviously he's left the club and also been at Chelsea, maybe it's proven that the managerial game is just not for him. It looks as simple as that. But Sean Dyche made mistakes at times. His stubbornness not to change it when sometimes we needed fresh legs. I always look back at that Forest game away. I was sitting there at the game myself, and I just thought, at 2-1, just thought, just bring on some fresh legs, because you could see Decore was one of the players who was getting tired. He's going to give the ball away for their second goal. Yeah. And you just think at times he is a stubborn manager, because a big thing with Sean Dyche appears to be trust. If he doesn't trust a player, then they don't get much game time. And that's what it seems to be. And I think even Demarai Gray has gone that way. If Dominic Calvert-Lewin's fit, you don't see Demarai Gray, because he doesn't trust him to play wide and track back and do the defensive side of the game. But all in all, as I say, he's done what he was asked to do. I thought we looked a lot more attacking under Sean Dyche and more of a threat under Sean Dyche than we did under Lampard. A lot of the time, to be honest, we looked that bit more solid at the back. Like you say, he made some big decisions. Decore being the main one, first game that he managed against Arsenal. Decore in from the cold after being ostracised and removed from the first team. Sadin set up under Frank Lampard because of a fallout. As you say, at times Michael Keane comes in the end. Again, stubbornness, I thought, in terms of not dropping him. But Yerry Mina comes in and does a good job. And, he got the big calls right, is what I'd say. But I think what we need to do now looking forward is you've got to support him now and back him in terms of what him and Kevin Thurber want to do in the transfer window. Bring players in that suit his system, players in that he thinks that he can trust, because we can't go through another season where, one, you've got one striker in Dominic Calvert-Lewin, and two, we haven't got options on the bench where if we need to change it or we need to bring on fresh legs, and the manager's got to be able to trust those players to come on and do a job. So we've got to back him in that sense, and we're going to have to be clever. Of course we are, but we've got to put ourselves or become a more balanced squad, because, like you say, you don't want to be repeating what's happened over the last two seasons. We can't afford a third season where Everton are going into the final couple of weeks of the season looking to try and stay in the Premier League. Progression would be finishing sort of 14th, and that's what we need to sort of think about. But good job by Sean Dyche, of course. Done what he got paid to do. Got a great bonus for doing it. And hopefully now we can become a bit more stable and reset both on and off the pitch.
Yeah, you'd hope so. I mean, there's a lot of things that are still to work themselves out, if you like, between now and when the season starts against Fulham. It remains to be seen who's going to be here by then, player-wise. Are we going to get anyone in? Is there going to be a lot of movements in the transfer market, which we'll come on to? But I think if we want to take any sort of comfort, really, going into next season, I know it's difficult to do as an Evertonian, but if you want to have a little bit of optimism, it's sort of, I suppose, I think, in my opinion, I think we'll be down there next season, but I don't think it will be anything like last day of the season to stay up, relegation battle type of thing, because I just think if you just look at Dyche's points per game ratio and in terms of how he knows how to get results compared to Lampard, I think it'll be enough to make us, comfortable without. Obviously, I think we'll have things to worry about next season, of course, because let's have it right, they're not a great set of players, but I don't think we'll be in as a position of disarray as we were this season, because Dyche was essentially clearing up the mess left by Lampard for large parts of this season, wasn't he? So it'd be interesting to see for a full season how he can maybe set this side up to get results, and that's what he did. I say it again, they're not great players, the poor players, if I'm being quite honest, and he got results and he got points, and that was the main thing. So if he can do that over the course of a season with a fair few new acquisitions, then hopefully we won't be looking an as perilous situation next time round. Obviously, the other bit of news last week was Everton announced a retained list of players who are offered a new contract, players who haven't been offered a new contract. Begovic gone, Mina gone, Townsend gone. I think they're the main ones. Missing anyone else? Cody not offered a contract, which I think surprised a few people. But then, of course, as well, Tom Davies has been offered a new deal as well. Seamus Coleman's offered a new deal, which a lot of people are happy with, including myself. And Andy Lonergan, of course, offered a new contract as well. So, what are your thoughts on the whole retain list? Of course, the elephant in the room, I suppose, for a lot of people is the Tom Davies one. Be interesting to hear your thoughts on that. I know we split a lot of opinion, Tom Davies, but what was your reaction to the retain list?
Obviously, Tom Davies was the surprise, wasn't he? But what we need to remember is that it was just he was offered a new contract. I think the talk as of today, this afternoon, what we're recording today, that all the talk was about him turning that deal down and looking to move on, which to me makes perfect sense. Yeah. I think Everton have just seen it as it's another body for the squad. We do play a midfield three under Sean Dyche. We're likely going to continue in that manner. And it's someone on low wages. He's not going to be on mega bucks, is he? Of course. And it was just a pretty sort of straightforward contract offer. But Tom Davies has got to decide: does he want to sit on the bench at Everton, or does he want to go and play football? Because even obviously the chances are Onana's going to move on. By all accounts, that's what all the talk is about at the moment. But even then, you're not going to see Tom Davies starting games, because even before we bring somebody else in, which we will do, I'm sure, you look at that midfield three, and for me, you throw in James Garner, start ahead of Tom Davies. You could throw in Alex Iwobi into the middle and drop the Corey back if you needed to, and that's all before you even consider Tom Davies getting a game. So I think that it was a bit of a surprise, as I say, the fact he was offered a new deal. It was, for me, it was just a sort of sensible hat on with Everton, thinking about why have they done it. Seamus Coleman, dead easy, isn't it? And by all accounts, he signed a new deal. We're just awaiting the official confirmation. Made perfect sense. We don't want to see Seamus Coleman going out the way that he could have done in terms of with it, not a terrible injury, but at the time we thought it could have been. And there was talk that he may retire. But perfect sense. Next season, have your two right backs, Patterson and Seamus Coleman. He's shown the level he can still play at this season. Coleman, think he was terrific under Sean Dyche, to be honest.
He was.
And Lonergan, he's got the easiest job in Wales football, hasn't he? Hasn't played a game for about 5 or 6 years or something like that. And but he knows his role. The point is, I think it was Begovic was on a podcast. I think it was with Ben Foster, wasn't it, on that Fozcast last week? And he said, like, the goalkeeper group, it's so important when you go to a club that you have a good goalkeeper group, which includes your first, second, and third. So he's obviously young goalkeeper, but also your goalkeeper coach. So with Everton, Alan Kelly's been there for a number of years. And he said it's a great group. It's a good group. We're close. We all get on. So him moving on raised a few eyebrows, really, but out of contract, was offered a new deal. Wants to go. I think he wants to go and play and start. And he's been linked to Luton. Luton Town are apparently in for him. So if they can offer him, say, a 2-year deal, and he's going to be the number one goalkeeper, then why would he stay at Everton to stay on the bench? So I get that. He's not a bad level at all. He's pushed Jordan Pickford over the last 2 years. We'd all agree. And when he's come in for Jordan Pickford, I think he's done a decent job. So it's what we do in terms of, do we replace him? Does João Virginia come back in to that goalkeeper group option back from? He's only 23 or 24 himself, still only a young goalkeeper. So we'll see. But the only surprise from the retain list really was the Tom Davies situation, and obviously Begovic not signing. But when you look at both of them and you sit down and you think about it, you understand both decisions, to be honest.
Yeah, you look at that, and it's a fair handful of players which have left the club now. Yerry Mina, of course, he went for his own reasons. We all know that the situation there, high wages, doesn't. The amount of games he's played for Everton just completely doesn't warrant a 5-year contract. Andros Townsend again, could he been a good squad player? We don't know. Listen, he picked up a really bad injury, and we didn't really see that much of him. We only really had him for about a year. So obviously that leads us on to the next topic of conversation, of course, which is the transfer market. It's so blatantly obvious that Everton need bodies. We needed it in January. We needed them last summer. and they've been very few and far between. We all know the financial situation at Everton at the moment. It seems very much like it is going to be another sell to buy market, similar how it was this time last year with Richarlison. It seems, if you believe what's being reported, that the asset this year, which may be able to give us a bit of flexibility in this summer's market, is the potential sale of Amadou Onana. A lot of talk around Amadou potentially going to Chelsea. Do you expect him to leave this summer? I think I do. And if you look at the bigger picture, if it enables us to bring a few bodies in to strengthen the squad, of course, would that be something you'd be open to? I think, in my opinion, it makes sense, especially if we really want to start reinvesting in these forward areas, which really cost us last season, didn't it?
It does make sense, and it's a real shame, really, isn't it? Because when we brought him in, it was seen as a bit of a coup. We outdid West Ham in the bidding side of things. He wanted to come and obviously work for Frank Lampard, and it was a welcome sign and got all the attributes to be a fantastic central midfielder in the Premier League. Big long limbs, good in the tackle, loves to put his foot in. You could see, look at the assist he put through for Dwight McNeil against Brighton for that 5th goal. Look at the ball he slid through for Garner Gay against Bournemouth that game of the season when the keepers tipped it over. He's got a little range of passing there, Onana. Sometimes, though, he plays within himself for me. That's what we've seen with him. You want him to stretch his legs and carry the ball at pace. You want him, even I was watching the Bournemouth highlights about the under time again before, and I'm watching Onana. I think he had a decent game, but he takes a simple option maybe too often, where sometimes he wants to get his head up and look forward, where sometimes he'll go back or sideways. But he's a young kid, was he 21 years of age? It's just a shame that we haven't been able to keep him for 2 seasons, 3 seasons, and build a bit of a side with more quality around him, because he could be the linchpin, I think, as he gets older for any side. But we are where we are. I think, Jordan Pickford is the other asset, if you like, who would demand the big money and signed a 5-year deal to protect both ours and his position, to be fair, in February. But I just think that we won't move Jordan Pickford on. I know he's been linked to United and Tottenham, but they seem to be looking elsewhere. I think he's quite happy. He's happy at Everton. He knows the club. He likes where he lives in this part of the world, and I think he'll be staying. So Onana is the sensible option to move on. Obviously, there's a sell-on clause, which any 20% goes to Lille. We don't know yet whether that 20% is 20% of the whole transfer fee or 20% of the profit that is made above what we bought him for. I would assume it's of the profit, because it is Everton we're talking about, but it would be a crazy deal to say we sell him for 60 million and you get 20% of that. Wouldn't make any kind of sense. But he's the one, isn't he? By all accounts, he should free up a little bit for us to go and dabble in the transfer market, because otherwise I think it's going to be very much a case of frees and loans over the course of the transfer window before it slams shut.
This is the frustration, isn't it? We love to be able to go and spend, I don't know, in today's modern terms, it doesn't even like an awful lot of money, and 20 million on Gyökeres or something like that from Coventry, you can just come in and be a really credible solution to our goal scoring problems. But it's just not that straightforward at the moment. And, as you said, we are where we are, and it looks like Onana will probably leave, and then hopefully we can start making a few deals. Do you expect? I know it's difficult to say, but do you expect Kevin Thelwell and the likes to have targets lined up right now? I think he has to, really, doesn't he? It was so glaringly obvious how much we lacked in goals and any sort of creativity last season. Surely there's options there ready and waiting. It's just a case of being in a position to, financially and logistically being able to make them happen, which of course is very difficult at the moment, isn't it?
Yeah, apparently we had a list for if we stayed up and a list if we got relegated. So there was 2 lists there. It's quiet at the moment. There's been a few little links here and there, but you'd like to think the club are keeping things close to the chest. Obviously, there's a lot going on off the field as well, as we know. But Kevin Thelwell and Sean Dyche will be allowed a little bit of time away, I'm sure. Probably Sean Dyche more than Kevin Thelwell, but work will be getting done as we speak, because, especially if we're looking at free agents, you've got to get in there while you can. And when their deals finish at the end of June, you want to make sure that you've got them lined up to come in at the start of July, announce that particular deal. And there are some decent frees out there that Everton can certainly have a go at. And we've got to be clever, as we said. We've got to get away from bringing players in and offering them daft money. We've seen names linked like Dembele being one. Alfredo Morelos, not a big fan of his at Rangers, linked this afternoon. Not a huge fan at all. Don't see what he brings to a Premier League side, to be honest. But when we bring these kind of players in, we still can't afford to be giving them 100 grand a week, because that's how we get ourselves into the trouble that we find ourselves in at this moment in time. We've shipped players out on big money over the last sort of 12, 18 months. Yerry Mina being the latest, and we've got to be sensible. But I trust the manager to be able to bring in the right player to suit his system, and I fully expect when we line up on that first day of the season against Fulham at Goodison Park, that the side will have a different look to it. It will look that little bit more balanced, although it won't be complete, because obviously there'll still be a couple of weeks left in the transfer window. But I fully expect us to certainly have that more balance and have a few more options than we've got at this moment in time. But it does depend who goes as well. There's a lot of talk around players leaving. Damari Gray has been linked with a move away to Fulham. What's going to happen with obviously other positions? Mason Holgate's been linked with moves away in the past, and Willem Shaw again in the summer. What do we do in terms of a striker? We need probably two for me. At least at the very least one. But we need, I'd probably say two strikers, two attacking players to come into that side. So a lot of work to be done, to overhaul this squad, because certain areas we're awash with players, other areas we're not, and we need to get that balance right. And it's going to be a tough summer, I think, and we've got to sort of strap ourselves in for that, and not to expect Everton to go out and spend silly money, but it's going to be an interesting time, I think, to see what the manager and Kevin Thelwell can do.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of variables, isn't there? A lot of things. A lot of things depend on outgoings and all the rest of it, but it's just so glaringly obvious, and we just can't afford to make the same mistakes. A lot of, you'd like to think the club have learned not to pin all the hopes on Dominic Calvert-Lewin, as we saw last season. That just completely backfired on the eve of the Chelsea game. So yeah, we'd like to hope that by the time we do kick off, there's a lot of fresh faces. Listen, the transfer window opened. What was it? Yesterday? Did it open? Fully?
It was yesterday, was it?
Yeah. Listen, at the time of recording, it's been open for 24 hours. So there's a long way to go. Yeah, but remains to be seen. Just finally, before we start to wrap things up, of course, we've got to address the sort of bigger elephant in the room at the moment, and it's of course the changes at board level, which the fans were campaigning to the hilt last season, which we saw for the vast majority for the executives to be removed. We've seen Denise Baxendale, chief executive, leave her position. We've seen Grant Ingles leave his position, and of course Graham Sharp leave his position. This was this Monday or Tuesday that this announcement came out, and of course it was mentioned that Bill Kenwright, a decision would be made on his position within the 48 hours. At the time of recording, that was yesterday at 5 p.m. It is currently Thursday, 6:10, and there's no announcement at all. And it just sort of proves the point more than anything, Mike, doesn't it? The club have just completely contradicted themselves in their own statements, which it just proves the point more than anything, doesn't it? So, how do you feel about this whole current Kenwright situation and the whole movement with the board, which we've seen this week? What's your take on all that?
Well, it's been coming obviously for a while, and we were just awaiting obviously the announcement. The MSP Capital Talk has been obviously on live for such a long time. They attended the game when the ball weren't even there. It was at Southampton, the whole headlock gate situation, and so all this change at boardroom level has been expected. We just wanted obviously official confirmation, and like you say, that came on Monday. That three of the board were on the way. Which was obviously welcomed, of course. There needs to be a change of board members and also of culture as well. But the big name who's still there is the chairman, of course. And when Everton come out with a statement and say that we will get an update in terms of the chairman and also an interim board in the next 48 hours, and that deadline passes, it basically confirms all that we already know in terms of how the club is run, how poor communication is. And the fact that when we're told things, we should never go by what the club say, because quite often it never comes true. So Bill Kenwright, or Chairman Bill, as he likes to be known, is still there. And it depends who you believe, doesn't it, really? I mean, talking a paper about he was going to resign on Monday, but Farhad Mashie basically begged him to hang around. We don't know in what guise that would be. But also there's talk that because of obviously the shares that he's got, is it what, about 1,700 shares in the club still, that he's trying to get the right price for them. So obviously when Farhad Mashie can remove him, but also he has the option to buy his shares as well. So how's that going to work? Are they going to go across to MSP and the money's going to come from MSP? We just don't know, do we? So it's one of those things where it's dragging on. Of course, we want the confirmation that he's gone, because I think that as a fan base, especially, we want to get back united with our club. And like you said at the start of the show, we want to start to heal those wounds that have been open for so many years and got worse over the last two. So yeah, he's still here, as you say, and hopefully you know over the course of the next few days we get some more clarity on that. But I don't hold much hope out on that, because of, as I say, you know, we made a statement, they haven't stuck by it, and we're still in the same situation we were in regards to the chairman, you know, since he's been at the club.
Yeah, that's spot on, isn't it? You know, people just want this whole chapter to be finished with now. We just want to focus on, you know, how Everton can get better, and we can bring in better players and start supporting the manager and the team, and just start, you know, building our way back to just improving. That's all we want. And, you know, stuff like this, it's almost, you know, I don't want to use the word silly, because I feel like, you know, everything that's been done by the fan base in the last 12 months or so has been so important. And, you know, had these actions not been taken, a lot of these individuals would probably still be at the club. So it's very important. But, you know, you almost like want this circus of the whole board situation just to be done and over with, so we can just focus on moving forwards as a club. And hopefully that time will come. It's still very difficult to see how Bill Kenwright can remain at the club. And, you know, hopefully and probably he will go at some point, but it's just, who knows? The club don't go on their own statements, so that could be at any time. But listen, we'll leave it there. Big thanks to Mike for jumping on. Be sure to check out the Unholy Trinity podcast. Be sure to subscribe to the Toffee Blues if you haven't done so already. You can get this podcast wherever you get your usual shows from. And we'll be sure to keep many updates coming throughout the closed season, throughout the summer, in terms of transfers and everything else that's going on at the club. So be sure to keep on watching. Big thanks again to Mike, and thanks for listening. So we shall speak to you next time here on the Toffee Blues.